Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks in a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business at paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Some of my viewers wonder how I could go 13 years without a full-time job. And the answer to that question is very simple. If an employer does not make me an offer of employment, then I cannot start work at their job. Now, I have made every effort to get another full-time job ever since I lost my job at the City College of New York in October of 2008. And ever since October 22nd of 2008, when I lost my job, I was out here trying to find another job. And I have been putting in applications tirelessly over the last decade, trying to find that full-time job, but I have not been able to get an employer to make an offer of employment. And I have been trying tirelessly to get that full-time job, going to the library practically every day for several years, putting in 15 to 20 applications with businesses all across the city. And in addition to putting in applications with employers all across the city, I was also going out here and taking trainings to get my skills further up. Because when I first lost my job at the City College of New York, I quickly headed to the Manhattan Educational Opportunity Center to learn PC repair. And after I got my PC repair training in 8 weeks, I quickly went to go take my A+ certification in November of 2009, where I scored a 840 on the 220-601 and an 842 on the 220-602. So I am an A+ certified IT technician. Unfortunately, what I found after getting the certification is many of these employers in the IT game play the experience game, where they want you to have experience in order to get one of their jobs. But even in spite of that, I was glad to have the training, because it has enabled me to keep most of my PCs and my Macs functioning and running over the last decade, as I have serviced them myself. Now, even though I wasn't able to do much with that IT training because I couldn't really get jobs because they kept putting up all of this experience in front of it, I was still looking for work. And as I was out here looking for work, I also was starting my own SJS Direct Publishing imprint, an imprint I established in 2009. So I have been working tirelessly as I've been looking for work, but this is something many employers just doesn't see as having a value. And one of the problems I run into with lots of employers is they will go out here and discount experience because they don't understand where it comes from. And I ran into that way back in 2007 when I did my first interview with the central office of the City University of New York, and I had talked about my AmeriCorps Vista experience at Strive, and the woman who I was interviewing with, a black woman, discounted all my experience because it wasn't a quote-unquote paying job. So I've been running into resistance from employers who, a lot of them they're really rigid in their thinking, and they want everybody to come from a so-called traditional frame of experience where you get a job and you're working for extended periods of time. But in today's job market, many people like myself, they cannot work for extended periods of time because we run into recessions like the one that happened during 9/11, and we run into recessions like the Great Recession of 2008, where it is hard to get another job because a lot of employers, because they believe they have leverage, go out here and use different things to disqualify perfectly qualified candidates, and they do this because they usually don't want to give that person a chance, either because of their own personal biases, like many females who have their female own group preference, like I ran into at the City University of New York in their hiring pools, where they preferred women over men, or I would run into employers who had a lot of other personal biases. Like I went to one interview where I ran into a white woman who clearly had an issue with black men. And I would also run into employers who would disregard a man's experience, because I remember applying for a security job where this woman who I was talking to on the phone during the interview just decided to basically laugh at me because, oh, I did not work for a paying employer since 2008, and because I did not work for a quote-unquote paying employer, she thought it ridiculous that I go out here and apply for a job. And that was one of the things that really aggravated me, because I go out here and I'm looking for this security job just so I can have some money in my pocket. But this female, because I don't fit into her box, decides to laugh at a man who is trying to get back on his feet. And that's one of the other frustrating things I run into in this decade-long job search, is I run into a lot of people who really don't understand where I am coming from, and instead of trying to give a hand up, they just want to slap you down. And instead of them trying to give you that chance so that you can get back on your feet and move your life forward, these people would rather turn their back on someone like me, and they would rather have their smooth world, because they want to be comfortable and they don't want to see another person rise up to another level or be able to grow. Because have theirs, they could care less about someone like me, and that makes it really hard when you're trying to go get that job to get back on your feet. Now, in addition to this, I would also put in applications all across the city, and I would apply at many of these retailers out here for jobs. And many of these retailers, I would get 3 responses. For example, when I applied for the Target 10 times for, again, a pocket money job, I would just get these form responses telling me that they were going to move ahead with somebody else. And I applied for Target, I think, about 10 times. I applied for Walgreens, I think, about 6 or 7 times. And I would go out here and apply with different retailers multiple times, but unfortunately, they did not want to pick me for their positions. And I remember being in places like your Century 21 when it was open, or Uniqlo, and again, not getting picked. And even worse, going to some of these interviews when I was able to rarely get them, and I would also run into a hostile environment in these interviews. Now, in these interviews, I would run into 3 situations. One was the HR brick wall, where the females who ran the interviews would go out here and use their female own group preference and their own personal biases to weed out many of the men, especially the black men like myself, and they would try to find ways to disqualify us from moving ahead in the employment process, because many of these women had issues with men, and some of these women who had issues with black men would already show their hostility and even sometimes their racism towards a black man. Now, I would also run into another scenario in many of these interviews, and that was the interview where you would run into the person who wasn't even engaged in the interview. And that was another one that was really aggravating, because here I am putting my best foot forward to get this job, and this person is basically acting like they basically don't care. So this person comes to the interview, they're not interested in asking any questions, they're not coming to the interview with any sort of engagement, and they want you to come in there and be so-called enthusiastic and engaged, not understanding that as the leader, you are setting the tone for your business. And if I'm seeing you acting like you're not engaged or not even trying to ask any questions or trying to interview, then it's not going to be a really strong interview, because how can I connect with someone who is completely turned off? And how can I sell this person if this person is apathetic and not even trying? I mean, in order to have an interview, you need to have somebody who wants to engage with you and somebody who wants to connect with you. Because when I go out here and I do a live stream and I talk to my viewers like I am right now, I make every effort to engage that person, whether they be thousands of miles away, and convince them to pick up an SJS Direct book. But when I go to the interview, I ran into such coldness and indifference from these females that it just made me look at it and go, I'm pushing and trying everything I can, but this woman is just not engaging. And some of these males were the same way. Now, the other interview I would run into when I would rarely get them was the group interview. In the group interviews, this is where the HR people just got really lazy, and they did not want to go out here and interview people one-on-one, face-to-face. And because they did not want to interview people face-to-face, they would just go out here and group people in a room, and that was basically like a gladiator combat situation. And in that situation, you had people shouting over people, talking over people, and it really was basically people fighting for a job. And it's hard to sell in that kind of environment, because it's more about the egos of the HR people and trying to find this person who's supposed to be so emotional. But I wouldn't want somebody who's emotional like that, because selling is not about emotion. Selling is about passion, and you have to have a passion for the product. And if you don't have a passion for a product, then it's hard to sell that product, because you need to make the person care about the product. And when you have people fighting in a gladiator style, that's not going to really be constructive towards hiring and retaining a worker. Now, in addition to that, I would also run into the hostile interviewer who was trying to drive emotion. And these people think that, oh, if I get this person push their buttons and get them emotional, they'll show me how badly they want the job. And that's not, again, a good thing that I would run into. But that's not the kind of way I engage during an interview, because I want to see how professional the people are in the organization, how they're going to carry and conduct themselves if we were going to have a conflict or an issue, and how they would go out here and solve problems as related to the job, to show that how we're going to be a good fit at working together towards solving the problem. And somebody who's looking to push buttons and agitate and upset people just when you first meet them is never a good thing. But I would run into all of these different types when I would go to these interviews, and sadly I would not be able to secure a second interview or be able to secure full-time employment offers, and that's in spite of all of my best efforts. Now, I've run into all sorts of resistance when I would go out here and try to interview, and some people, they would get extremely hostile when they would see SJS Direct on my resume. I mean, I remember going to the John Jay for criminal justice interview for a CUNY office assistant position, and I remember the black woman there getting angry and saying I had a business and why would I want this job. I mean, that was not a professional question as I saw it, because whether or not what I'm doing on the outside, it should not have been a point to the point where you're saying, oh, he has a business, because you're making an assumption about me. But she was getting to the point where she was getting angry about it, not understanding that the qualifications that were supposed to be met was I passed your exam with a high score, and I was still on the list for employment. They came at this to try to, again, disqualify me, a black man, because I was publishing my own books and trying to use that as a reason to go out here and disqualify me. But that's one of the things that I ran into as related to that HR brick wall. And I've been out here again looking for work over the last 10 years, but I've still been pushing and doing my own thing because I always understood that you always needed to have a side hustle instead of in addition to a job, and you need to have that side hustle because you need to have a way to make money when your job winds up falling through. And that was one of the things, thank God, I had when I lost my job in 2008. I started working on that side hustle of building the SJS Direct imprint. I started getting the money together in 2008, and by 2009, the end of it, I had the first SJS Direct book, all about Maryland, published and ready to go. And I was out here making efforts as I was looking for work to try to sell SJS Direct books, and I was out here pushing and promoting those books as I was looking for work. But many employers, they don't see a value in any sort of work when you go out here and take an initiative for yourself. I'm finding they only see value in work when you have another employer's name on your resume. And that's one of the more troubling things I see about today's job market is unless you're working for somebody else, employers don't see a value in your work or your work experience, and they don't see how your work experience matters. And in many cases, it doesn't matter to them unless you've got a brand name attached to your name. And for a black man like myself, that kind of feels like slavery because, you're not considered working unless you're working for a white man or a white man's company. But when you go out here and take the initiative yourself, I thought that meant more because you are working on your own, you are working on your own time, and you are showing that you can go out here and work autonomously and you can work at a regular pace on your own. And if someone were to just take a minute to look at all of the work I have done in publishing on Amazon.com, writing and publishing over 75 books in over a decade, they would see that I was not just sitting around doing nothing all day. They would see that I have extensive experience in writing and publishing books, and I was so good at it that I was out here publishing books on a consistent schedule for over a decade, and got to the point where I was publishing books consistently, 4 to 5 books a year, and getting books to the marketplace on a semi-annual schedule. That's what the kind of experience I have to offer. I have a strong work ethic, a strong initiative, and can work on my own autonomously, and I can go out here and further reach larger markets like I have over the last couple of years, reaching markets that were considered unobtainable many years ago in the publishing world, like black men who they said never bought books, but black men buy my books on the regular. And I have reached foreign audiences and reached out to other audiences out here, like the goth subculture, and I have reached out to African American fantasy and science fiction audiences. So I've done a lot over the last decade, but this doesn't have much value to many of today's employers who just want somebody who comes out of a box and wants everybody to just be with a chronological record where they show they've gone working from one company to the next, but never really took any initiative to go out here and accomplish something on their own. So that's one of the hard things that I have as related to the job market. Many employers, they want their employers to be prepackaged. They want their employees to come out of a box. They want their employees to be the safest kind of individuals, but they don't really want someone like me because they say, oh, he has too many gaps, or he has non-traditional experience, or he hasn't really worked for somebody who is paying. But I'm going out here making money legitimately with with books I have sold, and I have the tax records to prove it. But these people don't want to give me a full-time job because they want somebody who they has the experience that they feel comfortable with. And many of these people, everything is about comfort, and they want to be able to say, this guy comes from this school, this guy has this degree, he's worked at this brand name company. And that's one of the big problems with today's job markets. Employers, they don't really understand that people like myself and many of the youngsters out here, they don't have that traditional experience because our job market has changed. And the last two recessions where people were out of work for a year or 2 to 3, maybe even 4 years, a lot of those people, they are out here and they're trying to get jobs, but they can't get jobs because the employers really don't understand how 9/11 changed the job market, the Great Recession changed the job market, the COVID-19 pandemic changed the job market, and they don't understand that it's harder to get jobs in certain places because oftentimes many employers, they expect everybody to be able to just pick up and find a job almost immediately, and it's not as easy as people think. Sometimes you can put in hundreds and thousands of applications, but many of these employers, they really, again, they don't understand where people are coming from. They see the world from their own narrow view, and they don't understand that every person's experience is not their experience, and that the world has really changed. Because a lot of times, these jobs, you can have them today and they'll be gone tomorrow. Like many of the freelance jobs I worked last year, where I did some editing for a brother's website, and I did some editing of a manga. Jobs come and go, and that happens in today's job market. But many employers today are still sitting there looking for a person to have multiple years of experience, multiple degrees. They're looking for this ideal, perfect candidate from the 80s, but in the 2000s, the average job only lasts 1.5 years, and the average person at the most has only 5 years at these companies, and they're expecting a person to have super long tenures. But the era of super long tenures ended in 1991 with the George H.W. Bush recession, but that goes over many employers' heads. But I have been looking tirelessly for a job for the last 13 years, and I don't have a job not because I don't want to work. It's because employers will not hire me, and I'm out here every day looking for jobs, putting in applications, and going out here and trying. I'm putting out, again, 15, 20 applications a day. And sometimes I'm putting in multiple applications with the same business, like I did with Target, hoping something will pick up. But sometimes I give up because sometimes these companies, they just show me that I never will have a shot at that company. So I just, like City University of New York, because of the female-owned group preference, so I just move on. And even though I don't have a full-time job, I'm still working, whether it's going out here working on the books on the SJS Direct Imprint, or I'm working on videos on YouTube, or even if I'm out here selling figures on eBay, I'm always working on something because you have to make a living. Because while many of these employers would say, I'm an unemployable individual because I have not worked at one of their companies for over a decade, I still have to go out here and make a living because that's the only way I can go out here and eat and take care of myself. So even though these employers will sit there and say, this person is unemployable because they have not got a job with our companies, that person still has to go out here and make a living. Because even though these employers will sit there and try to cancel someone because they don't fit into their box, that person still has to live out here in the world. And I'm still trying and I'm still pushing to get another job. I would love to have another full-time job, but it's all contingent on the employer making me an offer. Because what I find when I would go out here and it really would frustrate me is that I would see people with less experience and less skills, and they would go out here and get jobs, and I would see especially a lot of women getting jobs like that. But I am sitting here again with a college degree and over a decade of publishing experience that is the equivalent of a master's degree in publishing, because I was reading an article in the New York Times where it stated that they had this course called the Columbia Publishing Course, where people would pay $10,000 to learn how to go out here and publish books. And I have all of that training, and I taught myself all of that training by reading articles online, doing research into different printing companies, doing research into how books are laid out. I trained myself in the same type of skills that these white girls in the publishing industry go out here and spend $10,000 to go and get. And I have the same master's degree level skills in publishing that those white girls have, but because I don't fit into their box, I can't get that job. And I also have, again, A+ certification in PC repair, and I also have a degree in business. But if these employers won't let me use any of those skills, I've got to use those skills for myself. So that's the way I see things. I mean, yes, I would love to have a job, but it's all about the employer coming out of the box and seeing the skills I have to offer. Because if you go to Amazon.com and look down the list of books I have published, you'll see that I have consistently published ever since 2008, and I have been publishing books consistently on a schedule that's semi-annual if you look at the dates from that period on. And in 2013, I believe, I published 13 books. So that's an example of the drive and work ethic I have. And if you look at the ads I place on this YouTube channel, you'll see that I've gone out here and used my own marketing skills to reach new audiences and reach new readers. So I'm out here, and while the employers out here don't value the work that I'm going out here doing, I'm still out here working, because if they won't let me work for them, I'm going to have to work for myself. And that's something, again, I want the job, but if the employer does not want to give me a job, then I have to go out here and work for myself. So a lot of people sit there and go, oh, why hasn't he worked in 10 years? Well, it's because the employer does not want to hire me. And the employers out here, they, as I see it, are one major part of the problem. Because if you go out here, put on your best foot forward, go out here and make every effort to interview with them, and they don't even try, then how can you go out here and sell somebody who is not even interested in being convinced? So I have gone out here and pushed and pushed and pushed, but if the employer does not respond, I cannot go out here and work for someone who does not want me working for them. And that has always been the problem with me in the job market. People will always look for a reason to not go out here and hire me, not take a risk on me, and not see what I have to offer. They're always looking at somebody else, and that's one of the things that's really frustrating. And again, even though it's been over 10 years that I haven't had a job, I would love to have one, and I would love to show employers what I can do. But if they don't want to see what I am trying to present to them, then I'm going to have to go out here and present it to the public like I do in many of these videos and many of the books I go out here and publish on the SJS Direct Imprint. Because if they won't go out here and take a chance, then I've got to take a chance on myself. Because in order to make a living in this world, you have to go out here and do it for yourself. Then you go out here and do it for yourself, because you can't sit here and have somebody tell you, oh, you're unemployable and you'll never work, because that's not going to work for you. And that's the way I see it, because the only person, if they won't let me work for them, then I've got to work for me. And even though it would look like in their eyes, oh, you've got all these gaps. Well, I've got all these tax returns to show that I have been working and generating revenue, and I've also got the sales records to show SJS Direct books are selling, and I've also got the receipts to show that many of these employers these days who say they're so desperate for employees are not as desperate as they present, because again, here is a man who has a college degree, over a decade of experience, A+ certification in PC repair, and many of these employers don't want to make an offer. All they want to do is make an excuse when I apply with them. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this or request a video, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications that feature positive images of black people and positive stories about the black experience, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers this April, ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door must take on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess in paperback and e-readers this April.